Today, I'm interviewing a friend of mine and a longtime fellow Amazon and e-commerce seller named Karl Jacobi. Now, we are talking about one of the most essential aspects to succeeding with your Amazon and e-commerce business today, which are those mental hurdles and sometimes those subconscious beliefs you don't even realize that you have that need to be overcome to actually succeed and break through whatever barriers you may be running up against as you try to run your business. Now, this can happen in e-commerce. This can happen for any business. So whether you're an e-commerce seller or not, this is going to apply to you. Now, my name is Jimmy Smith. I have been an Amazon and e-commerce seller since 2015. I run multiple 6 and 7 figure businesses. I'm on a mission to help make online selling easy. And one of those most crucial aspects is overcoming the mental hurdles. Now, Karl has some free resources for people that I recommend checking out. If you go to successwithkarl.com, and that's Karl with a K, find the link below and in the description. If you go to that place, you'll find a few different resources to help you overcome these mental hurdles that Karl and I will be discussing today. So I'm really excited for this interview with Karl. Again, he has been a longtime friend and has sold over $40 million worth of product on Amazon. And one of the biggest keys to his success and the success of all the people that we've worked with is making sure that you can get through those mental and emotional hurdles that are holding you back. So if you have any questions, post them down below. I'll be sure to relay them to Karl or to answer them myself if I can. Excited to be bringing you this interview with Karl Jacobi. Hey, Karl, thanks so much for joining me on the channel today, man. I'm excited to have you here.
Thanks, man. Super excited to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty crazy to see kind of that we're doing this today. We've been working together on a whole bunch of different things over the years, whether I think it was 2018, 2019, whenever we
Yeah.
first got introduced to one another, and we had a couple businesses that we've done
Yep.
together, and we kind of grew up in the Amazon and e-commerce space together. And you've gone on to do huge things, $40 million of sales on Amazon through wholesale methods and other things. And so I'm excited to have you on the channel, talk about some of the mental hurdles that people go through and how to overcome those. Because going from a job to millions of dollars on Amazon requires a lot of mental hurdles. So give us a little bit of background for anybody that doesn't know who you are. Just a little bit of background on where you've come from and where you are right now.
Yeah. So thanks again for having me. It's amazing. Yeah. Like you said, to come along, since 2018, 19, whenever that was, and grow up together in the e-commerce space. And so thanks again for this opportunity. A little bit about myself and my story. Prior military, spent a number of years in the military. I did not retire, but I did spend about 8 years in the military, Army specifically. Did some wonderful vacation spots throughout overseas. Yes, hint of sarcasm in that, but it is what it is. My recruiter lied to me. What can I say? So yeah, I spent some time overseas. I got out, and throughout this transition, going from being in the military, I didn't become a defense contractor, doing the same thing essentially, but I was a civilian and got paid a lot more money, and but still did the same jobs overseas. So, however, that's pretty much where my entrepreneurial bug came from and inspired from. And I started actually an eBay storefront in 1999 before my first deployment to, at the time, it was Bosnia, I believe. Yes, it was. I think it was Bosnia or Kosovo. I forget which vacation spot it was. But yeah, that's pretty much where my e-commerce adventure started, was in 1999, and eventually moved into Amazon 2014-ish.
Wow, so that's yeah, quite a lot there that you did from 1999. That's pretty early to get into eBay, so that's pretty cool.
hmm
So where you started on Amazon in 2014. Where did you go kind of from that point to today, right? So you got another 10 years at this point of this recording anyway. So how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, I started the adventure in 2014, and however, I did everything I shouldn't. I did everything the wrong way. I did every lesson wrong, essentially. And what I mean by that is, I hired a bunch of VAs, virtual assistants, and at that time, I was starting off in online arbitrage, or OA. And so I bought everything they told me to buy. I didn't know what to check. I didn't know anything. I was just, I didn't really want to put forth the effort to actually learning what I was supposed to be doing on the platform. So I did everything wrong. So if anybody's listening, take these lessons learned at my expense. You're welcome. But nonetheless, I spent a lot, I wasted a lot of money. And so I think probably a little less than a year into that journey, I actually quit. I was like, nah, this ain't for me. And at that time, I was still an entrepreneur, or I was still employed full time. And, I have a family, plus other family obligations and other things. And it just wasn't the right time. In hindsight, it wasn't the right time because I wasn't in the right mindset. Right. So I wasn't willing to be teachable, coachable, really to learn and apply myself. And like I said, I just didn't have the right mindset. So fast forward about a year or so, I got back into the game. Work environment got very toxic. I needed to do something different. I know I wanted more in life. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always loved being able to control what my destiny was, whether it was time freedom, financial freedom, whatever that was. I wanted to have control of that, not somebody dictate, how many days off I can have a year, how much money I can make, what kind of house I can buy, fill in the blanks, right? So I got back into the game of, selling on Amazon, and I actually started back into the game by selling used books. I went through thrift stores, Goodwill, book sales and what have you. However, in my neck of the woods at that point in time, I lived in Enterprise, Alabama. There is only so many books you can buy in a small town located in Alabama. So if you don't know where Enterprise, Alabama is, it's for a reason. So there's not a whole lot going on over there. So I eventually tapped that out. However, it did give me the knowledge, skills, and confidence to be able to know how to read rank. This is before Keepa was really kind of a thing at that time, or where everybody relied on Keepa. It gave me confidence to know how to read rank, to create shipments, how to label and send things to Amazon, and really kind of get that momentum going. So then I got into retail arbitrage, scanning clearance aisles and going through Walmart, any other stores I could possibly find. Again, I was limited by what was available in our area. One Walmart in an hour drive. It's kind of hard to build a business, at least a sustaining one, in that kind of environment. So right about that time is when I got into the Legends community and met Ryan and Danny Stock at that time and got into the Legends community. And at that point in time, I think membership was, I don't know, 40, 50 people at the time. I kind of feel like an OG in now. So, but we're one of the grandfathers. Man, I'm getting old. But so yeah, I got into Legends, and that's kind of where things took off from a business perspective, because then I started to learn what Replens was, right? Buying products at retail, or at a consistent price where I could flip for a profit and continuously to buy them over and over and over. So although it did take me quite a bit of time, to really figure out what the replaying concept was. Yes, I was literally, not literally, but I was metaphorically smashing my head against the wall trying to figure this process out. But once I kind of had that light bulb moment of figuring out, oh, okay, this is what replens is, and learn how to find these different products in these different stores, whether it's regional stores, your chain stores, or what have you. Things started to really click for me. And in that time, I actually got into wholesale by accident, and it wasn't really known as wholesale. I got, as I mentioned, one Walmart in a 1 hour drive. So there was a specific store. I don't remember what store it was. It wasn't a Walmart, but it was a specific store, in Enterprise. I was constantly clearing out this aisle for a couple of products. And so I'm like, man, I've got to find a way to get more. So my next thought was, man, why don't I just go directly to the brand? And it was a smaller brand. I mean, it wasn't like a major brand that you see everywhere. It is now, but it wasn't at the time. And so I reached out to brand directly. I said, hey, I'm clearing this store out every week of this product, and I would love to be able to just buy this directly from you. And they're like, yeah, not a problem, as long as I was able to order a pallet's worth, which at that point in time I was able to. And that's really how I got into wholesale. So this was probably early 2008 or late 2018, probably even early 2019 is when that happened. And it's kind of been just a growing business since then. And of course, right away COVID hit, things kind of, got a steroid injection, where sales really took off and business grew. So, right around 2019, in 2019, I actually left my full-time job and became a full-time entrepreneur. And that's when I pursued this business on a full-time basis. This and some other businesses, some of which you and I started together as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. Just to hear that story, right, of how you can go from having a job and just starting dabbling inside of or into e-commerce and growing that into much, much bigger things. I know though, during those, I guess it was 20 plus years if you started in 1999 with that eBay store. But
Hmm.
10 years if with 2014 and 20 plus with 1999 and eBay. But over that time, there were probably a lot of mental hurdles, a lot of
Hmm.
difficulties and struggles that you had to go through, as there
Hmm.
is with any business. I mean, a business is
Yeah.
not a walk in the park. It's not just extremely easy that anyone can just show up, no matter what people say online. The Amazon business specifically that we both have been in is simple, but it is not
Hmm.
easy. And so, what are
Correct.
some of those mental hurdles that you see, the people that you've coached, on Amazon and other places have seen?
Hmm.
What are some of those mental hurdles that you experienced? And let's get into that. And then we can also talk about how you've overcome them after.
Yeah. So some of the common things that that I dealt with personally was because everything was so new. It was the common like fear aspect. Man, what if I buy the wrong product? What if I screw this up? What if I it was always that fear aspect of making a mistake. And especially as I moved into being a full-time entrepreneur where it's all on the line, right? I had no safety net. I didn't have another income to catch me in case, it's all good. I only lost, a couple 10, 20,000, right? As being a full-time entrepreneur, that kind of hurts. So I had no safety net. So, oftentimes it's the fear of making mistakes. What if I bought the wrong product? What if I bought too much? What didn't buy enough? Or anything of that nature. It's just the fear of making those mistakes. Also, in my experience, not just as being an entrepreneur, but also coaching many others, is the thermostat, if you will. Thermostat, I mean, is the invisible barrier that we hit because we somehow don't deserve that next level of success, right? So you may crunch along and you hit $50,000 in revenue a month, or it could be 100,000, but you hit that thermostat because man, this is getting scary for me because I'm on now uncharted waters. It's really becoming a beast. I don't think I really deserve this level of success. And it could have been because a narrative that was fed to you by, somebody that they thought at that time that was trying to protect you, in case you did fail. They didn't want to see you get hurt. But it could be a story that was fed to you by your loved ones, your parents, your spouse, or former business partners even. But being on both sides of the fence, that's been a very prevalent thing, especially nowadays, is that invisible barrier that limits us because we don't feel that we deserve that level of success. And that inner critic, it's in our minds, when we make a mistake, criticizing ourselves because okay, yeah, we made a mistake, but we are oftentimes our worst critic. But yeah, those are the common things that I see as an entrepreneur as well as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to me because business oftentimes it can be a mirror and a reflection of who we believe that we are, right? We'll hit a certain point in
Hmm.
our business and we either don't think we deserve the success we're seeing, so we cap ourselves from doing it, or we've been
Yeah.
told that we're only ever going to hit a certain level, so we can never break past that. And
Hmm.
so we can kind of see that in the way that we operate our businesses, the way we treat our employees, the way that we handle money in a lot of cases.
Yep.
Sometimes being really tight with your money can be bad in business. Sometimes being really bad with your money, can also be very bad in business. There's a lot of things that reflect who we are. And in many cases, that can come back to feedback loops and what we tell ourselves as we experience things. So, how do you recommend people recognize certain things that they're saying in their own mind, right, to themselves?
Mhm.
How do they deal with those feedback loops?
Yeah, one thing is to ask yourself, where is this coming from? Is this real or is it not? Like fear in itself is very real, very real. Like I hear, in fact, I had this conversation in our community the other day. You hear so many people, experts, gurus, whatever you want to call them, talk about, oh, fear isn't real. You know, fear is false evidence appearing, real or this, that, and the other. That, that, that makes me skin crawl because actually fear is very real. Fear is is reaction, a feeling that you first experience. It's a natural reaction that's been programmed since God created us, right? So it's our ability to take a moment to sit there and ask, wait a minute, where's this fear coming from? Is it real? Like, is the scenario real? Now, not the feeling, but is the scenario that's causing this fear real, right? Let's just say, for example, there's an opportunity to invest in a product and a brand, but man, that's going to require an investment. Play that scenario out, right? And what's the worst case can happen? Okay, you lose some money. Are you going to die from that? More than likely not, right? Right. But yeah, I mean, there are scenarios that that are legitimately could be afraid of. And that's when you need to take some calculated risks to make sure that, um, you're taking the necessary precautions, right? You're not just diving, head first over a bridge and say, hey, I'm good. No, feeling's good, right? Um, but like I said, you've got to refrain that fear and lean in. And that's the biggest thing for me that's really contributed to my success is every time I hear that voice, every time I hear this or feel this feeling like, ooh, I ask myself, okay, where's this coming from? Let's play this out. Okay, worst case scenario, I lose some time, I lose some money, or I lose whatever. Am I gonna die? No, I'm not. Okay, so really it's not that bad if, worst case scenario it doesn't play out. But what if it does work, right? That's what I need to, focus on is what if this does work? Ah, okay, got you. Then I lean in. And 9 times out of 10, I would actually say a little bit more than that, but I can't go above nine. But 9 times out of 10, when I lean into my fear, that has been when my biggest breakthrough has come through. Whether it's been in business, it's been in relationships. Like even when I jump on calls, sometimes I'm like, I'm scared as heck, right? Either speaking on stage, it's making a business decision, or it's doing a podcast like there is that fear. Like, what if I say something wrong? Or what if, my brain glitches and it's not brainy today? And, and that's happened to me. I spoke at a conference a couple of years ago. My brain didn't brain. I glitched and completely lost my train of thought. Everybody got a good joke out of it. So did I. That was the worst case scenario. I didn't die. And, my health is good. So we often put too much emphasis on the fear and we develop these negative stories in our minds of things are just they're not real. The feeling is real, but the scenario of which contributes to that fear is not.
Mhm. What do you think drives some of that fear that does come up, as people move forward? If you've got some scenario, right? Maybe it's investing in a
Mhm.
product or it's investing in a, training program or it's, even jumping into a lake off of a bridge, right? Not in a bad way, but like for fun, right? You're on a
Mhm.
rope swing or something. What's that fear that drives that? Is it emotion? Is it your
Mhm.
emotions that are kind of needing to be more controlled? Is it resistance that you need to lean into? Like, what is that in your opinion that causes that fear?
Yeah, in my opinion, man, it is a combination of both the resistance aspect and emotion once you've processed that feeling. But a lot of that also has to do with the programming that you've been receiving for most of your life, right? So it could have been, and not just the programming, but maybe past mistakes that are contributing to the decisions you're trying to make today, right? So if you've had some adversities, if you've had some missteps or some mistakes in your life, and you have not yet processed those and forgiven yourself, for lack of a way of saying it, for those things, because we're human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to screw up businesses. We're going to say things that's stupid. We're going to make the stupid decisions. But the problem is we don't give ourselves grace, right? To process. You're like, yep, you know what? I screwed up. I learned from it. And, I'm going to give myself grace because chances are I'm not going to do that again. But so many people, and I was the same way for the longest period of my life, where I, every time a decision came up to that would propel my life forward, either it was in business or in my personal endeavors or what have you, I always had this scare, if you will, because of the what ifs, right? Because of the mistakes I made in my past, because of the things that were told to me when I was a child. I had a mother who told me that success was not, it's not in our blood, Carl. You didn't get the nod from Gandor saying you're going to be successful. It's not in our blood. You're never going to be successful. And the more I look back, hell, she received the same programming. I literally watched my mom die in every aspect of the word, die in front of my eyes. And I learned that my mother was also subjected to abuse in every aspect of the word abuse. She was fed, very hostile, hostile, toxic things by her dad, which I learned he was adopted. So it was a generational curse that got handed down, handed down. And I literally watched my mother die from the inside out. And that affected me. And I didn't realize it. I did not realize that it was capping me and my potential and preventing me from moving forward because of these voices that were being programmed many years ago, you know, and that I see that in a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, and not just entrepreneurs, just the people in general, is they're scared to throw themselves out there because they're scared of what, in their mind, they're scared of what could happen, right? Because of what somebody told them in the previous, in the previous chapters, or like by their loved ones, or the mistakes they've made, or what missteps they've made. They haven't released themselves of that. They haven't given themselves grace for those things. So that's the holdbacks in 50, 60, 70% of the people I work with, if not more.
Wow. Yeah, it's pretty incredible to see the things that people um end up going through that impact their lives for a long time. Even as a kid, when you're young and impressionable, you get told certain
Hmm.
things, and you may not even remember that you were told these things at 3 or 4 years old, and they're playing out in your life at, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old and beyond. How do you recommend then that people kind of uncover some of these things? They may know it, they may have an awareness that they were abused as a child, or that they were, had something told to them even when they were 30. But how do they become aware of these things and then work through them?
Yeah. So the biggest question I ask when somebody says, when they say something that's associated with a limited belief, I ask them, where did that come from? Like, what did you just say? Where did that come from? I know it came from your mouth, but there's something that fed into that mouth. Either it was from their mother or their father or their coach. In fact, I work with a client now. He had a very aggressive sports coach. And so it was the most impressionable person in his life because his parents wasn't really around all that much. But his coach was kind of like, not only just a father figure, but, obviously, his coach in his athletic endeavors. And so it's not, when those situations come up, I ask them where those things come from. Then I try to trace it back as much as I possibly can. It's like, okay, so it's not you that's saying that. It's your coach, it's your mom, it's your ex-wife, it's your ex-business partner that said that. Deep down, you can do this, right? It's just a matter of putting your foot out there and lean in and go out there and attack. Let's take small steps towards whatever it is that you want to achieve. Soon as they see that, oh crap, yeah, okay, I can do that. Like I challenge this guy, hey, listen, man, we're gonna do this for 1 week. And my goal for you is to make sure you're able to attack it consistently throughout the week. And he came back, this is the first week, and he's like, man, I was able to smash 6 days out of 7. wow, and so it's all about recognizing where it comes from and using that, not just using it as fuel, but reconciling that. Listen, that's not me. I am made for more. I was meant for more, right? And knowing that and identifying these holdbacks so it doesn't hold you back from tapping into your potential, showing up to be the best version of yourself. You've got to identify those logs that I call in this framework that I developed to identify and recognize or reconcile these logs. You've got to go through that process. There have been countless times, that I've gone into, actually, I do it with every client I work with. I go into the trenches with them to uncover these logs, whether it was, a divorce that, wiped them out, or it was a bad business decision, or, something happened in their childhood, or maybe a military trauma. Like I said, I'm prior military. Like we uncover these logs to get them to the surface so they can start living the life that they were made for, right? And so, yeah, that was a long-winded answer to your question, but that's the process that we go through to remove these barriers that's limiting us from living to our potential.
Mhm. So you uncover these, different logs, right? These difficulties or these biases, these things that
Mhm.
you've experienced throughout your life. And whenever you uncover them, you realize that they're there. And what do you do with them, right? Do you just say, okay, cool, I know this is there, it's not me, and so as I face resistance in my business, I can see if it's because of that. And so you move forward. Do you try to work through forgiving the person that may have done something to you? Like,
Mm.
what is that
Hmm.
process? Because as a Christian, there's so much that we're called to. And, I'm not sure if your coaching is Christian related or not, but we're called to be transformed by the renewal of our mind. We're called to die to
Yes.
ourselves and be raised with Christ. We're called to no longer be I who lives, but Christ who lives through me. And so I look at a lot of mindset issues from a Christian perspective. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts then on how do we move forward as we uncover these hurts that are holding us back in our businesses and in our personal lives?
Yeah, 100%. Yes, what we do is faith-based, and that's what you brought up in a sense of forgiveness. That is a huge element to be able to move forward. I talked about earlier, giving ourselves grace, right, for mistakes we made, missteps we've made, bad decisions, things we said, this, that, and the other. But also, I wouldn't say, more important, but it is just as important to forgive those who, has wronged us in some shape or form, whether it was something they said, they acted on, or what have you, right? So, real life scenario here, I ask everybody I work with to get a notebook. I don't care what size it is, but get a notebook because we're going to divide it into three. And the middle section is I am forgiven for. And they're going to write down everything that they're forgiven for. And I forgive as well, right? Like it's a reciprocating event. And they are listing out every single things that, that's holding them back mentally. And in addition to that, we're going to write letters, right? Any significant event that is contributed to this, we're going to write a letter. I don't care if the person, is 6 feet under and decomposed. The whole point is I want this, written so they can process this, right? And so I have them write these letters to, it could be for parents, it could be from ex-spouses, it could be business partners, or somebody, they wronged in college or in high school or what, you know, fill in a blank, right? But they write these letters and the amount of release they get from that, not just the release, but like, wow, it's an experience I can't explain, So yeah, we go through an exercise where, we work through the forgiveness part, we process that trauma, we process that event, and then we turn around and use it as fuel so that we ignite our purpose and make sure that we don't repeat that again, but also use it as fuel to ignite our purpose and move forward regardless of any adversities and regardless of how we feel or anything to move us forward to fulfill our purpose.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and a key part of that forgiveness too. I mean, if you're giving yourself grace, you also have to realize that that other person that may have harmed you or hurt in some way, they also have
Mhm.
gone through other hurts, as you mentioned, with your mom earlier, that she was abused throughout her life in so many different
Yep.
ways. So, there is that element of having grace upon other people. And I'm curious too, whenever you do, go through this process, you find a way to use this as fuel. Give me an example, right, of how you can use a prior hurt in some way to be fuel for your future endeavors.
Yeah. So I guess one of the best scenarios I can have is, you know, I would just use that same example with my mother, right? So what so the exercise that I've gone through was, I sit down, I process the events that occurred, and I write it down. I am forgiven because I wasn't the best son. I recognize that. I was a hoodlum back then. And so I go through this exercise, and then I write this letter to my mother, and obviously she's no longer on this planet there, and I never got to reconcile we never got to reconcile our differences before she passed. So that, I mean, that affected me for a long time. And so what I do then is, as I go through this, I use this as fuel to move me forward because I do not want to disappoint my mom, right? I don't want to have this to be in vain. And some of this is surface level. I'm not going to lie. Like some of this is like, hey, I want to prove my mom wrong, right? It's kind of like that just watch me mentality, where I'm proving somebody wrong. But I'm actually going a little deeper in the sense that um, I want to show up to be the best version of myself because my mom was not able to do that for me. I want to break that cycle so that I can be the best version for my kids, right? And so that in hopes that I break that generational curse and they have a version that I didn't have, right? So that's one way that I've used that trauma, the series of events as fuel for me. So it inspires me to show up to be the best version for my wife, my kids, and anybody that I need to show up for. Another small example would be a business partner I had. Um, you know, uh, not the very ethical individual, and moral compass is definitely not swinging in the direction it should. And making those series of events that really impacted me in a variety of ways, not just my family and so forth. It did impact me here, but using that and reconciling, like, okay, you know what? He didn't hurt me because it was a personal thing. He hurt me because he also had been hurt in his life. As the common phrase goes, hurt people, right? So I had to forgive him and then use that as fuel, like, you know what? I'm going to show up to be the best business leader that I can be, the best person that I can be, so that I can potentially influence him to be a better version, or the people around him, or just, you know what? Have him realize that, man, I screwed up. And maybe get an apology from him someday. That may never happen, and I'm fine with that. But that's some examples of how we can use these past events as fuel to show up to be the best version of ourselves each and every single day, regardless of how we feel.
Awesome. So what you're saying is then sometimes these logs, as you uncover them,
Hmm.
can become probably short-term fuel where you're trying to prove someone wrong, right? In some cases, it
Yep,
can be long-term, but that can also flame out and, and burn out
exactly.
over time. And so really
Hmm.
after you've kind of gone through that stage, it becomes more important to figure out what is the true burn inside of you, the thing that you
Yes.
are trying to accomplish in your life with your family, your friends, your business, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
And so getting to that point, I assume requires, quite a lot of introspective viewpoint. How do you help to recommend that people uncover what that purpose or that drive is beneath the surface, right? Beneath that initial log? How do you recommend that people find that?
Yeah, it is a process. For the framework I've created, it's a three-step process, right? So you need something to get you started, that initial spark, that initial flame to get to your deepest inner fire. And so, yeah, we cover the first stage where we're kind of covering the surface level stuff. Just watch me mentality. Maybe you've got something to prove to yourself, to your former spouse, former business partner. But like you said, it eventually, fizzles out because once you've proved that person wrong or you've achieved that little layer of success, it's like, then what? Right. So, then we start to work through like, okay, let's find the deeper things that really truly drive you. And here, every person is different, clearly, right? But what fuels people individually, it can be drastically different. And as we uncover some of these things, it's like, what, like for example, I'll kind of run through another scenario in dealing with another client. At the end of the day, you've got to be the inner 2 year old, right? What does a 2 year old always do when you tell them to do something? Why, right? You got to be the inner 2 year old. So when somebody says to me, "Hey, I want to lose 100 pounds," okay, why? Well, because I want to lose weight, be healthier. Okay, why? Because I want to be around for my kids. Okay, we're getting there, but why? Because my dad or my mother or what have you, passed away, and I didn't really get to know my dad or mother or whatever, and didn't get to walk me down the aisle or so forth. So now we're starting to get somewhere. Is to identify what truly drives them, not just because they want to lose weight. No, there's a deeper fire because they want to make sure that they're around for their kids, right? So, but as we uncover these things, a lot of people are not motivated. It may seem like that at the surface, but they're not motivated by the tangible money things. And really that's a good thing because, once you attain that level of financial success or material, obviously it's going to go away, right? What mostly happens is that they realize that they're motivated by impact. Hey, who can I influence to make sure that my story, the legacy that I leave, right? And at the end of the day, it's about trying to identify the legacy that they're going to leave behind. Like, how is your name going to be spoken? Not just when you leave this blue marble, right? Let's talk about a little bit more short term. How is your name going to be talked about when you leave the room, either, whatever room you're in, right? And so that's really what we're getting at is how is your name going to be talked about when you leave the room or even when you leave this blue marble? Did you leave an impact? Did you influence somebody's life or some, people's lives? Did you impact somebody's life in such a way that, you got them from addiction, you got them from, from being a drinker or, from an alcoholic? Did your story influence them to be a better father, a better mother, a better business leader? So it's really that legacy aspect that we're after. When you leave this blue marble, how do you want your name to be portrayed? And that's what really resonated with me the most, especially as I'm getting into my next chapter of my life.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very impactful thing to start thinking about how do you want to be remembered. I don't know if you saw, have you seen anything on the recent fight between Jake Paul and Mike
Yeah.
Tyson? But Mike Tyson had an interview with a little kid. Did you see that? And the little kid asked him
No.
about legacy. And he was like, "Oh, legacy's nothing. I'm just going to die one day." So I'm curious. I do think legacy is important into like who you're around and how you impact people. But how do you kind of keep that in a place that doesn't become prideful that, oh, I want to have a statue built of me like Rocky in
Mm,
Philadelphia or something. Like, how do you keep
yeah.
that from becoming a bad source of motivation, but wanting to still impact people? Because sometimes you can be the best janitor ever and be a great husband and a great father, and that is your legacy, that you were just a consistent, great
Hmm.
family person, right? So, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? How do you not allow that to get out of control?
Yeah, it's not about you, right?
Right.
And it's something I've had to really recognize for myself is it's not about you, it's about the bigger picture,
Hmm.
right? And so that's one of the core components we talk about in our program is the bigger picture, realizing that, it's not about us. Like things don't happen to us, they happen for us. So in how we deal with that. So that is the best way you can check yourself to make sure that you're not doing this from an ego perspective or a prideful perspective, is to make sure that, you know, it's not about me, right? Like as I'm working with a client, I'm not doing this. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's some, gain from this relationship, but my motive to impact that person isn't because of the gain I'm going to receive afterwards in a monetary perspective. My gain is the fulfillment, like, hey, I was able to impact that person's life. And guess what? There's a ripple effect in that because now, because he's better, he's going to be able to be a better father. His kids are going to be a better father for their kids, and so forth and so forth. Or, if he leads an organization or leads a church or what have you, there's that ripple effect, right? He's able to show up to be the best version of himself. So it's not about me, and I have to have that conversation quite a bit because sometimes, yeah, things can kind of catch up to the upstairs part, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't about me. And sometimes I have to check myself and have people who hold me accountable to that as well to make sure that, as I move forward in my life, to make sure that I'm in check on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a good perspective to have because we do need to always be in check and we need to be focused on how we can impact people in the right way. And we need to be concerned with how are we speaking about ourselves and what are the things that we've, learned throughout our lives consciously or
Hmm.
subconsciously that are kind of, dictating our actions, whether we know it or not. So I do know that I mentioned this at the beginning of the video here that you have a website that people can go to learn a little bit more on some of the
Hmm.
mindset training that you have. You have some free resources available at successwithkarl with a K.com. And that
Yep.
link will be below and in the description. But Karl, can you tell us a little bit more about what's going to be at that site and what they can expect to receive when they go there? Again, free content that they can access.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have two things. So one is a blueprint that I've developed to show you how I broke through these chains. So this is from real world personal experience, inspiration that I've got from my own coaches, in addition to how I broke through these chains, how I'm doing it, not showing you how just to do it, but how I did it. These are practical things you can implement into your life starting, today, or whenever this is going to be released. In addition to that, there's actually a solid 2.5 hour course. There's about 35-ish video series of videos. It's called Ignite Your Core program or blueprint that they'll have access to, that you'll have access to. So yeah, once they go into the website, put in the information, they'll have access to that PDF and have access to that course or to that program.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I thank you so much, Karl, for coming on and talking about it. I know that this is something that you're doing more and more of, right? This is something that
Mhm.
you have, as you got through doing Amazon, you want to help people get over these mental hurdles, these emotional hurdles, these even subconscious hurdles that they don't even realize are there right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to be able to provide some resources that you've got available at successwithkarl.com. Is there anything else you want to leave the YouTube audience with today before we hop off?
Yeah, the biggest takeaway is, for those that are listening, I've been through some tough times. I know what it's like to live with negative emotions, negative thoughts, this frustrating feelings that, man, um, deep down, you're made for more. I know I'm made for more, but you keep hitting that invisible barrier. Look, I've been through this. I've lived a life of negative emotions, negative mindset, feeling broke, feeling broken. I get it. Let me show you how to break through those chains and break those chains so that you can show up to be the best version of yourself because you can do it. And if you don't want to believe in yourself, borrow my belief. Because at the end of the day, this is all about belief in yourself and breaking through those chains to show up to be the best version of yourself so that your future self, from 12 months from now is going to give you a high five, and it's not a high five in the face.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Carl. I appreciate you as a friend, and
Yeah, I
it's been
appreciate
great
you.
having you on here. Hopefully, we'll have you on again sometime soon. And yeah,
Yeah,
everybody can go to successwithcarl.com with a K, and we'll see you over there. So thank you so much. Hey, thank you so much for checking out the interview with Karl Jacobi. If you've made it this far, hopefully you've gone to successwithkarl.com to check out those free resources on overcoming those mental and emotional hurdles that you may be experiencing without even realizing it. It can be holding you back in your business, and overcoming those things in the right way is what can help get you across the finish line, get you to the next thing that ultimately gets you over those hurdles. So I'm really excited about this content that Karl has put together for free for the members of my community and this audience here. And so I hope that you check that out. Ultimately, I hope this video helps you and blesses you. Post your questions and comments down below. If you're interested in any of my Amazon or e-commerce training, again, you'll be taken to a sales page if you go here to apply, but it's at askjimmysmith.com/legends. Tons of success that we've seen for students, and we go through all of the aspects of successfully running an Amazon business. I hope this video helps you and blesses you. You have a great rest of your day and a blessed rest of your week.